Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vishnupada, Prahamsa, Parijakacharya, Ashurtashata Shishrima, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupada, Prahamsa, Parijakacharya, Ashurtashata Shishrima, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Advaita Acharya Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 11, titled The Transcendental Qualities of Vritasura, text number 23. Do you have a phone or something that you can follow along? It's 6:11:23. Trivargikayasa vigatamasmat
त्रैवर्गकस्यस्य विगतम् अस्मत्
patir vidhate purushasya shakra
पथिर्विदते पुरुषस्य शक्रा
tato numeyo bhagavat prasado
ततो मेयो भगवत्प्रसादो
yo durlabo kinchana gocharo nai
यो दुर्लभकिञ्चन गोचरो नहि
trivargikayasa vigatam asmat
त्रैवर्गकस्य विगतम् अस्मत्
patir vidhate purushasya shakra
पथिर्विदते पुरुषस्य शक्रा
tato numeyo bhagavat prasado
ततो मेयो भगवत्प्रसादो
yo durlabo kinchana gocharo nai
यो दुर्लभकिञ्चन गोचरनैः
trivargikayasa vigatam asmat
त्रयीवर्गकस्यस्य विगतम् अस्मि
patir vidhate purushasya shakra
पथिर्विदते पुरुषस्य शक्र
tato numeyo bhagavat prasado
ततो मेयो भगवत्प्रसादो
yo durlabo kinchana gocharo nai
यो दुर्लभकिञ्चन गोचरो नहि त्रयीवर्गकस्य विगतम् अस्मत्
trivargikayasya vigatam asmat
पतिर्विदते पुरुषस्य शक्र
patir vidate purushasya shakra
ततो मेयो भगवत्प्रसादो
tato numeyo bhagavat prasado
यो दुर्लभकिञ्चन गोचरनयहि
yo durlabo kinchana gocharo nai. Trivargika,
Traivargika,
for the three objectives,
the three objectives,
namely religiosity,
namely religiosity,
economic development,
economic development,
and satisfaction of the senses.
satisfaction of senses.
Ayasa,
Ayasya,
of endeavor.
of endeavor.
Vigatam,
Vighatam,
the ruin.
ruin.
Asmat,
Asma,
our.
our.
Pati,
Patihi,
Lord.
Lord.
Vidate,
Vidate,
performs.
performs.
Purushasya,
Purushasya,
of a devotee.
of a devotee.
Chakra,
Chakra,
O Indra.
O Indra.
Ta,
Tata,
whereby.
whereby.
Anumeya,
Anumaya,
to be inferred.
be inferred.
Bhagavat prasada,
Bhagavat Prasada,
special mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
a special mercy of the Supreme Personality of God.
Ya,
Yah,
which.
which
Durlabha,
Durlabaha,
very difficult to obtain.
very difficult to attain.
Akinchana gochara,
Akinchana Gochara,
within the reach of the unalloyed devotees.
within the reach of the unalloyed devotees.
Anya,
Anyahi,
by others
by others
who aspire for material happiness.
who aspire for material happiness.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Our Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, forbids his devotees to endeavor uselessly for religion, economic development, and sense gratification. O Indra, one can thus infer how kind the Lord is. Such mercy is obtainable only by unalloyed devotees, not by persons who aspire for material gains. Purport. There are four objectives in human life, namely religiosity, dharma, economic development, artha, sense gratification, kama, and liberation, moksha, from the bondage of material existence. People generally aspire for religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. But a devotee has no other desire than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both in this life and in the next. The special mercy of the unalloyed devotee is that the Lord saves him from the hard labor to achieve the results of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Of course, if one wants such benefits, the Lord certainly awards them. Indra, for example, although a devotee, was not very much interested in release from material bondage. Instead, he desired sense gratification and a high standard of material happiness in the heavenly planets. Vritasura, however, being an unalloyed devotee, aspired only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord arranged for him to go back to Godhead after his bodily bondage was destroyed by Indra. Vritasura requested Indra to release his thunderbolt against him as soon as possible, so that both he and Indra would benefit according to their proportionate advancement in devotional service. Om Ganataramanasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshumatamyana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare. Thank you everybody for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class, either in person or through the Akash, for on this auspicious day of uh, Lord Advaita Acharya's appearance. And we are continuing as well with the always auspicious Srimad Bhagavatam in hearing about the transcendental qualities of Vritasura. And in this verse, Vritasura is pointing out to Indra that uh, the three, mm, of the, you say the first three goals of human life, dharma, artha, and kama, are mm, not the focus for the unalloyed devotees. Even moksha, technically speaking, is not the focus for the unalloyed devotees. But all of these things take place primarily on the platform of material existence. Having a material body necessitates certain things. Of course, all living things require four activities to exist: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And even the trees, they drink water. Actually, one of the terms for in Sanskrit for trees, I can't remember the exact stuff, like the actual words, but it's those who drink through the feet. Uh, Really, the primary uh, drive of human civilization and its development, one of the primary drives is eating, how to get enough food. It is actually said, by people who study civilizations and their collapses and their stability and all of those things, that humanity or any civilization is only 9 meals away from chaos. The sense that you can only last 3 days, right? Otherwise, people just become too hungry, and yeah, then it starts getting really dicey. Uh, and then, of course, sleeping. Uh, Everybody needs a place to sleep. Uh, Mating, which, of course, Prabhupada said, basically the entirety of uh, economic development is based on this principle that of attracting the opposite sex. Uh, there's this pastime that I'm sure many people know, but I'll repeat it anyway, where Prabhupada had just given sannyas initiation uh, to some devotees, uh, and he told, or he uh, inquired from one of the new sannyasis, uh, the women in New York, they're very beautiful, aren't they? This new sannyasi was very confused. He's like, I'm sannyas, I'm not supposed to notice women. Is this some test from Prabhupada? Like, is it a trick question that, I'm supposed to say, like, no, 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 Prabhupada, I don't notice women at all. Or am I supposed to say, like, oh, men, women, it's all, Krishna's energy. And so then Prabhupada, so he wasn't answering. Then Prabhupada repeated the question. Uh, the women in New York, uh, they're very beautiful, aren't they? Uh, and I'm not sure exactly what something else he said. He might have just given like, "Oh yes, Prabhupada," or "No, Prabhupada," or something. And then Prabhupada said, "They must be because the men build such tall buildings." So this drive is always there. And then, of course, defending uh, is there as well in many different ways. Of course, when we think of defending, there is, you know, defending one's own personal body against attackers and things like that, but also in so many other ways. For example, defending ourselves against the elements. So even things like clothes, houses, uh, heating systems, um, air conditioning. is all just under defending. And one could even class things like cleanliness as defending ourselves against diseases. So, these things are common. These four uh, activities are common to all life forms. Of course, we do things and we do these things in different ways. The lower species uh, don't have such arrangements for all of these things as we do in human society. But the activity is still the same. And actually, the pleasure that comes from it is still the same, whether one is in the human form of life, or a dog form of life, or a tree form of life, or a spider form of life, or anything. But in human society, there is uh, additional goals, one could say, or objectives is the word Prabhupada used here. Just dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately liberation. Dharma, religiosity, refers to, and dharma is, of course, one of these Sanskrit untranslatables, as it's sometimes called. There isn't an exact English word that corresponds completely to dharma, but it is more or less the way of proper action. It is only in the human form of life, in the higher forms of life, that one can consider whether one's actions are right and wrong, rather than just effective or ineffective. If a tiger is standing there, I can't reason with the tiger, oh, you shouldn't kill me because you'll be incurring sinful reactions. Uh, and even if you don't believe in sinful reactions, then the people from animal control will come take you away and kill you. But with a human, if a human is attacking me, I could try to reason with them and say, oh, my dear Prabhu, uh, not only are you incurring sinful reactions for needlessly attacking somebody, but there's also the police that will come and arrest you and give you a trial, and you will end up in prison. So even for your own self-interest, uh, do not do these things. This is really the foundation of human society, is in the proper ways to act with uh, one another. And this is, of course, Dharma is a big topic. You could probably give classes upon classes upon classes of Dharma. Uh, in every section of society, so every Varna and every ashram has their own uh, ways of properly acting in a actually civilized human situation. And this all falls under the aspect of religiosity. And of course, once this is there, once people learn that they can depend upon each other, then economic development comes. Then one is able to actually develop artha, ways to uh, actually satisfy the different uh, mm, needs of human life. Uh, because actually we require so many resources to uh, live, And the question is then how to best have those resources available for the consumption by the general populace. And this question is, of course, a giant one as well. There have been actually a lot of bloodshed over what is the proper way to allocate resources. We saw in the 20th century, for example, the attempt at implementing communism, which is the which is an answer to the question, to the economic question of how to allocate resources. And of course, for those who know the history, millions and millions of people died because of it. So, uh, and for a large, uh, to a large extent, uh, the reason for that to a large extent is because that artha was not based on the foundation of Dharma. It's just based on the imaginings of Karl Marx, and then later, of course, Stalin and Lenin and uh, all of them. Uh, but once the economic question is settled, then naturally people want kama, sense gratification. And we see that once people have uh, some time on their hands that is not just spent in trying to feed themselves, they engage themselves in so many different activities. Uh, these days, that's usually television, uh, the internet, maybe going out to party, things like that, but also art, music, literature, uh, even just community is all kama, sense gratification. How do I uh, gratify my senses? How do I have some pleasure in life? And then ultimately, there is the objective of moksha, which is liberation from material existence. Coming from I was thinking, just looking at this verse and purport this morning, that especially in the Western world, the ideas of religiosity and liberation are very tied up with one another, in the sense that the dominant religion in the West is of course, Christianity. And maybe those who grew up in that culture can correct me if I'm wrong, but the philosophy is that if one is religious, and they define religious as believing the right things, then at the end of life, one is liberated and one goes to heaven. And of course, we don't have to talk about what happens if you don't believe those specific things, those specific historical questions. But actually, moksha and dharma are two different things. Uh, because moksha is really the desire or the process of leaving behind uh, material anxieties. And people are always searching for this. Actually, the uh, drive that mm, induces people to take many varieties of intoxicants, uh, and whether that's alcohol, drugs, or whatever, is actually this relief from anxiety, or this desire to be free from anxiety, to not uh, have the pressure of material existence so salient or so hard on one's mind or in one's life. And because there is no idea of the higher realities, one simply takes shelter in uh, the material energy. And this is, in a certain sense, to be expected from kind of the philosophical viewpoints of today, in the sense that many of the modern philosophers are totally materialistic, in the sense that they say we are all just matter. We all arose from the combination of chemical elements, which they themselves rose from the fluctuations of quantum fields that were there at the beginning, uh, and that actually our entire universe is just a quantum fluctuation that one day might just pop out of existence because it just popped in out of nowhere and it might pop out of nowhere. And when you say it like this, it sounds ridiculous, but people actually believe these things. Of course, when you ask the scientists, uh, how exactly does a universe containing, uh, trees and bicycles and water and humans pop out of, some fluctuating quantum reality? Or, even more, or, more personal or less abstract than that, how does the mechanistic bumping around of electrons in the brain cause consciousness? And they say, oh, we're working on it, we're working on it. Prabhupada called this, the post-dated check philosophy. You know, if I give you, if you, if I give you a check and it has, the date 2 days from now, and you're just like, why don't you have today's date on it? And I say, oh, well, I don't have the money now, but in 2 days I'll have enough money to cover this check. uh, you might not trust that check so much, right? You at least wouldn't depend on the money until it's actually, in your account or in your hand, right? And Prabhupada gives the same idea of the theories of, or many of the theories of the modern scientists as, okay, tell us how these things happen, and then we can discuss. Until then, we have a theory of how all of these things happen, and you have nothing, uh, more or less. Uh, but this materialistic philosophy is very uh, popular nowadays because it is taught everywhere. It is taught in the media, in society in general, and in the schools. Sometimes, I'm not sure how much the charge is there today, but I know at least in the early days of ISKCON, as they say, there's the charge of brainwashing. That the devotees were just getting young people and indoctrinating them uh, into believing this religion. But actually, we're just educating. It is actually the materialistic schools and universities that are indoctrinating because we are being honest. We say, come to us and learn about God, and then they come and learn about God. A lot of times in the materialistic universities, they say, come to us so you can participate economically. If you don't have a college degree, uh, especially nowadays, it is very difficult to participate in the economy, to get a good job and have a uh, middle class lifestyle, so to speak. But once they're actually there, what happens? They teach, you're just matter. Everything comes from matter. There's no God. So they come so people come based on one thing, but they teach them all of this nonsense. So that is actually indoctrination. Uh, and because, as I was saying, people are indoctrinated in this way, when the uh, fire of the material energy, when the prodding and the pain of trying to interact with material nature is too much, they try to take shelter again in the material energy because that is all that they know. Uh, and this usually occurs by, as I mentioned, drugs, alcohol, things like that, but even behavioral things, anything that allows you to switch your brain off, whether that's television or YouTube or substances. It is all this desire for moksha. And of course, the way that they do it nowadays also destroys the first three objectives of human life as well, because practicing dharma in such a state is uh, very difficult. And then, of course, that affects economic development and even sense gratification. So people are aspiring for these things. And even the devotees in the initial stages might still be aspiring for these things. Prabhupada points out that if one wants such benefits, certainly the Lord awards them. Of course, the devotee, ideally even the neophyte devotee, depends on Krishna for these things. Uh, and also recognizes that according to the results of one's previous activities, one's karma, one gets these various things without extraneous endeavor. But uh, one is not expected that you know, immediately when one starts practicing, that one will be totally free from material desires. So part of our mission is also to develop a society where these various objectives can be obtained in a uh, way that is actually sane, which is, of course, the project of Varnashram Dharma, is actually the answer to the question of how to obtain these four objectives of human life. And of course, we are not just interested in Varnashram Dharma, but Daiva Varnashram Dharma, with Krishna in the center. Because actual human civilization uh, makes it so that even when one is pursuing these various objectives, there will be Krishna there, and one can make gradual advancement towards him. So even, one of the activities under sense gratification, community enjoyment, festivals, things like that. Of course, there are Vaishnava festivals, but even just, you know, being with the community and having pleasure and social interaction. The way that is done in a sane human society will always include kirtan and discussions about Krishna. There should never be any gathering of people anywhere on the earth that doesn't include the chanting of the holy name. Uh, and this way, even those who are not yet pure devotees are being benefited in so because even as we do all of our material activities according to the stage of life and of advancement and devotional service uh, that we are situated in, we can make gradual advancement. But actually, beyond the these four objectives in human life is the objective of the unalloyed devotees. It's the term that Prabhupada uses in this purport, which is just the desire to serve, mixed without being mixed with anything else. And that's where Prabhupada got the term unalloyed from. He saw a billboard. He was with some of his disciples, and he saw a billboard advertising unalloyed metals. Uh, and he asked one of his disciples, what does unalloyed mean? And the disciple explained that uh, unalloyed means not mixed with anything else. And Prabhupada really liked this idea, so he started using the term unalloyed devotee, a devotee who is not mixed with any other desire than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because there are various stages of yoga, of connecting with the Supreme. There is, of course, karma yoga, which is when one is still attached to the way of working. And one may say, I'm a Brahmana, I'm very much attached to Brahminical activities, but going and digging in the fields is not something that I'm, really want to do. Or uh, Vaishya might say, uh, I'm okay with being an entrepreneur, making money, protecting the cows and things, but sticking me in a classroom and having me study all day, trying to translate Sanskrit texts is just boring. So, okay, you're attached to working a certain way. Um, then work in that way, but give the results to Krishna. Give the fruits of your activity to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, of course, there's Jnana Yoga, very much analytical study. Uh, going very deep into all the different aspects that are explained, in the Shastra that one can find analytically by searching. Then, past these two uh, forms of yoga, is the ultimate form of yoga, which is bhakti, which is no desire to uh, for anything other than to serve. It's one might even be a brahmana and very studious, but the fields need to be dug up for some reason or tilled. Let me go do it, and I'll have as much pleasure there because it is service as I will, serving the deities or translating Sanskrit. And this is actually the original position of uh, the living entity. But it is very difficult to realize uh, this uh, desire, or very difficult to give up all other desires. And sometimes it can come in very subtle ways. One might say, I know I certainly said for a while, oh, I have the desire to be a pure devotee. But, what's actually behind that desire? Is it a desire only to serve, or is it a desire actually for moksha, to be able to go to Vrindavan uh, in order to, leave behind this uh, rotten material world? Uh, Actually, the first question I ever asked my Guru Maharaj is, how do I become a pure devotee? And I thought, it was, such a good question. Um, to want the highest goal and try to get it. Uh, but actually, at least in my case, I won't speak for anybody else. A lot of it was due to material desire. Oh, I want to be, the biggest person, uh, and have this position of being a pure devotee. Which is, I was thinking of it as an upadi, as a designation. I'm a pure devotee, and you're not pure devotee. Or I was a not pure devotee, and now I am a pure devotee. But actually, the pleasure of the pure devotees and the only desire of the pure devotees is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And, wherever they do that, they are happy. Uh, the attitude is not, let me go to Vrindavan and enjoy with Krishna. If Krishna wants to send me uh, to anywhere in the spiritual material worlds, anywhere, in order to serve him, either directly or by preaching, uh, then I will go. And it is actually this attitude of service that is satisfying. It is actually so satisfying that even the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes to taste it. There is the, uh, sometimes analyzed that there's the uh, Supreme Enjoyer personality of Godhead, and then the Supreme Servitor personality of Godhead. The Supreme Enjoyer is, of course, Krishna, and it is sometimes said that the Supreme Servitor personality of Godhead is Krishna's first expansion, which is Balaram. And then, of course, Balaram expands to the first Chaturvyuha and then the second Chaturvyuha. Then eventually there is Mahavishnu, who comes as Advaita Acharya. And actually, the mood of all of these other uh, expansions of Krishna is one of serving him. Now, even though they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are fit for accepting service from the living entities, they themselves want to serve Krishna, want to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is especially seen in the Gora Lila, in the various incarnations that come along with Lord Chaitanya. Which one of the first is Advaita Acharyas, whose appearance day we are celebrating today. And of course, he incarnated before Lord Chaitanya himself. Before any time before Krishna comes, he sends his senior servitors, you could say, those who are older than him uh, in Leela, in order to uh, set the stage for the pastimes. And it was actually the loud calling of Advaita Acharya, uh, along with others, such as Haridas Thakur, that brought Lord Chaitanya to the material world in order to preach the chanting of the holy names. Uh, one can see in one of the paintings that was done, Advaita Acharya worshiping his Shalagram Shila and thinking that the people in general, are so uh, engrossed in these four objectives of human life, just dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, with no knowledge of actually how to render transcendental loving service onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was thinking that, you know, even though I, Advaita Acharya, am an incarnation uh, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is not enough. We have to have Krishna himself come personally to teach how to uh, render pure devotional service onto himself. So he asked that Lord Chaitanya uh, come and enact his pastimes. Because this is the always the meditation of the pure devotees, is not only how do I serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but how can I induce others to serve as well? How can I uh, save them from the mire of material existence? Because a devotee's heart is full of compassion. By studying the Shastra, by looking at our own lives and the lives of others, we can understand material existence is just suffering. One, of course, there's material enjoyment, but the material enjoyment is actually, very small compared to everything else. And one can have some enjoyment, but it's always tinged with some suffering, and even if not, it's very short. And then once it's gone, one is always hankering for it. Uh, and most probably, if it's taken away, lamenting that, oh, I was in such a good situation and now it's gone. Uh, but you can understand. Uh, so we should understand, like the pure devotees, that this material life is simply suffering, and try to help people come to the stage of Krishna consciousness. So we should try to follow in the footsteps of Advaita Acharya in this way, and thinking, how can the uh, people in general be saved from their uh, illusion, from the suffering that they are in, uh, by interacting with the material energy. And in the same way that Advaita Acharya uh, called down Lord Chaitanya, we can also bring Lord Chaitanya to people, because the Lord has also incarnated as the Nam Avatar, the holy name, which we can bring to people. And of course, there are so many other ways as well. Uh, the books of Srila Prabhupada are also incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then, of course, we are very fortunate to be allowed to serve Sri Sri Radha Damodar here in his deity form. And in so many ways, we have the opportunity to bring and engage people in devotional service. So we should always be thinking, how do we help the people who are um, just suffering in material existence? Advaita Acharya was thinking this uh, about 538 years ago. Uh, but look at the level of culture then versus the level of culture now. It's only gotten worse since then. The people that Vetacharya thought were suffering were brahmanas, the kings, of course the low class people also, but there's at least some semblance of Brahminical culture, uh, even if it was somewhat corrupted. Here, especially in the West, uh, what is there? The world is just getting more and more insane. So we need to call down the Supreme Personality of Godhead in these various forms uh, in order to uh, save the people and bring them to serve Krishna. And this will be pleasing for us as well. During the birth or the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, uh, Haridas Thakur was at the house of Advaita Acharya, and they could tell that the moment that Lord Chaitanya incarnated to his pastimes in this world, they leapt up and started dancing uh, because of they were overjoyed and they could understand, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared, even though Advaita Acharya himself is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Uh, there's so many pastimes of Advaita Acharya and others preaching the holy name. So we should try to follow in his footsteps and try to hear about the various pastimes of Advaita Acharya to become inspired, and always be thinking about how to push on the mission that was in many ways started by him. Uh, and in doing so, benefit ourselves, benefit others, and ultimately serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I will end here. The doors are opening later today to give the pujaris more time to decorate. So we have a good amount of time for questions, comments, additions, subtractions, complaints. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for the class. It's really wonderful. And so many nice points and such a deep knowledge of the Siddhanta. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of things to ask questions about. Like you talked about pure devotional service, Vanashram Dharma, um, before Purusharthas, goals of life,
Yeah.
and modern civilization, and Nagari Acharya. And then first question would be, what did your Guru Maharaj said when you asked him about the pure devotional service? I'd be interested to hear what Maharaj said. And then I do have a second follow-up. Go.
So the question for those who couldn't hear, so I mentioned that the first question I asked my Guru Maharaj was how to become a pure devotee. The question was, what is the answer to that? He said, perfectly follow somebody who's perfectly following.
And so then I just wanted to make one comment also that it's interesting also what you were saying that when we first come to Krishna consciousness, that sometimes there are other motivations at play.
Mhm.
In other words, we're coming for, as you said, that people are actually wanting just to enjoy these little varieties of sense gratification that are available. And I just thought that it was interesting. And also, should I was looking to try to find the quote, but I couldn't find it. But Srila Prabhupada, once he's in a conversation with one Mataji about this, and the Mataji said, does the spiritual master ever cheat, ever trick the disciple? Srila Prabhupada says, yes, the spiritual master often tricks the disciple.
Hmm.
Spiritual master must cheat the disciple because the disciple is only interested in sense gratification, but the spiritual master tricks him to become a pure devotee of Krishna.
Yes.
And I thought that's such an interesting reflection how, in many ways, Krishna is always trying to trick us. Like in the beginning, when Srila Prabhupada's first disciples came in 26nd Avenue, he would serve them this incredible popular feast, all this prasad. He cook himself, rasgulla, gulab jamun,
Hmm.
everything. And they were like, wow, and they cook this amazing feast and they'd all eat it. And then when people started actually moving in, they move into the temple and start living there. So then at that time, every day they're getting fed this opulent prasadam. And then at one point, suddenly the prasadam becomes plain during the week. It's like
Yeah.
you're serving like rice and dal, and then and then only on the weekends for the Sunday feast they get this fancy
Huh.
prasadam. And the devotees said like, what happened? Like some of the devotees like left and they said they're like, yeah, I can't enjoy it for this great prasadam, and now it's all this simple prasadam. So and Srila Prabhupada said, well, this is actually better for you, to eat this kind of thing during the
Hmm.
weekend. Sure, you can have the Sunday. He made that as a how do you say like as a uh you know I forget the word. I can't think of the word. He gave it to them that they could do like that.
Like as a like recommendation or something.
No, as a what does it say when you? Oh my God, it was anyway. So he said that they can go on like that. You just take on the Sunday feast, they can have their big feast.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's there. That sometimes the spiritual master tricks the disciple, and it's interesting that also when one becomes engaged in pure devotional service, which is spreading the glories of the Lord, then one also becomes engaged in tricking other people
Mm.
in some way. Where we're trying to like attract the souls who are attracted to Maya to Krishna by giving them like a little Maya and a little Krishna,
Mm.
and they'll eventually become fully attracted. So even in that regard, I guess is where you could ask a question about pure devotional service. It is sometimes we might think that, okay, well, maybe we are doing pure devotional service because we are trying to preach, but how do we know that our endeavor to preach isn't actually just to satisfy our, our own subtle,
Mm.
remaining desires for so many things, so many things that can come through preaching. It's kind of one question that can also come because we often get engaged in a lot of material activities. So then how would you differentiate between a pure devotee who's doing material activities as a devotional service and a pure devotee or someone who is doing material activities but also still in the lower stages? What is the difference?
Hmm. So it's very difficult to tell from the outside
Mhm.
uh, the difference between somebody who's forming devotional service and has material desires still, or is doing it out of material desires, and one who's doing it out of pure devotion. Really, like, for I'm practically speaking, nobody but you can say which one you're doing, right? Because it's internal, right? The activity is generally the same, right? You're going out on boats or cooking for the deities or doing whatever. And the activity externally looks the same as the attitude that you do it with. And it's very difficult for somebody else to say what attitude you're doing something with, especially because, if you've been in ISKCON for a little bit, you know all the right things to say, right? If somebody asks you about something, you can sound like a pure devotee in a certain sense, or sound like an advanced devotee, whether or not you're actually advanced. But I would say whether one has material desires or has no material desires or desires liberation, just go on serving. Because if there is a desire somewhere to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if it's mixed in with all other sorts of material desires, Krishna will help you purify all the other desires that are there. Right? It's not, it's a personal philosophy. So it's not like, oh, there's just God somewhere up in heaven, uh, like sitting there judging people. And, it's up to you totally to, uh, believe the right things or do the right things, so that, after you die, you can get judged favorably rather than unfavorably. No, God's right there, right? Uh, and, God's right here. God's there when you say Hare Krishna.
Mm.
So Krishna is, everywhere in our lives. And he's actually personally directing things in the lives of his devotees. So the main thing is to keep on doing service. And you can reflect, what is my attitude in doing this? But even if one finds that, one's attitude is uh, mixed in with material desires, uh, you can always just pray to Krishna, help me serve you purely. Help me have no desire other than to serve you. And then Krishna will help purify you, which can be a very painful process sometimes. Because it's sometimes you go, well, say it isn't called the fire of purification for nothing.
Mhm.
So hopefully that is some sort of answer.
It's good. Akam Sadhu Kama Moksha.
Yeah,
Keep going.
yeah. Okay, we also have, I believe iPhone is Dina Polika.
All right, well, I just had
But
one thing to add to that. It was really a nice answer. I was just listening to a lecture yesterday by David Maharaj, the recent one, The Glories of Navadviptam, and a devotee was asking him a question similar to this, and he was saying that Krishna is Bhavagrahi, so I think that that's the name, that he sees the best of the devotee's intentions. So even if there's material desires mixed in, I was thinking how nice that is that Krishna is seeing like our out of all the intentions the best one. And then he was also saying to this devotee that oh, you can pray to Krishna, like Krishna, please just ignore the material desire part, because the devotee is saying, how do we pray, how do we pray, and he's like, well, just ask Krishna, ignore my material desire, please. Just focus on the other part. So I thought that was nice. Thank you for your class. It was really excellent.
thank you for your comments and additions. Any other comments, questions, etc.? So no one else is raising their hand online. So our in-person audience.
Just like a lot of things to reflect on there. It's also interesting that Srila Prabhupada, I was just reading such a purport last night in Bhagavatam, but Srila Prabhupada often writes his purports like, one will then simply attain devotional service and he'll go on enjoying life in devotional service.
Hmm.
Or like one should simply chant Hare Krishna and then one will go on enjoying life in devotional service. So he always gives the goal as enjoying life in devotional service. So what does he mean by that? Does he mean that there's purusharthas or does he mean in a different way?
Enjoying life and devotional services, enjoying serving Krishna.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's two levels of it, right? So that's the pure devotee side of it,
Yeah.
right? In the sense that uh, devotional service is joyously performed. We don't have to like in the perfectional stage, like in the pure devotee stage, we don't have to force ourselves to perform devotional service, right? Because the level of sadhana bhakti, we might want to or not want to serve on any given day. We might have an overall arching goal of wanting to serve, uh, but when it comes time to go do the arti or go cook, I say like, oh man, I'm really tired. I really don't have like a deep desire to go cook right now. But you go do it anyway, because that's the level that we're at. But even before the perfectional stage, just life in Krishna consciousness is a lot better than life in material existence. Like, even just from an external perspective, even if one isn't a pure devotee yet, Just, I mean, there's, of course, you can look at the science to back this up. People who are religious rate consistently higher in happiness scales, by psychologists, uh, than people who are irreligious. But even, just looking around, like one can see that, uh, just living a devotional life, even if one hasn't obtained the goal yet, is a lot more enjoyable than trying to move from this place to that place and just looking here, there, everywhere for a sense of gratification. In some of his lectures before, my Guru Maharaj has talked about the burden of enjoying. That actually, like this drive to enjoy, is actually very burdensome to the mind, right? Think about, uh, I don't know what your lifestyle was like before coming to Krishna consciousness, but maybe some people can relate to, like, if it's Friday night and you don't have anything to do, like if you're in college or something and it's a Friday night and you don't have a party or something to go to, or maybe your friends are busy with something. There's actually like something in the mind. It's like, oh, I'm wasting it. Oh, I'm wasting my time that I could be enjoying, just sitting at home and doing something. So actually, it's a burden to because we're not actually the enjoyer. It's a burden to try to be the enjoyer. So as soon as one starts to have to uh, do the other thing, try to be the servitor, then life becomes better. Even if one can't get all the way there, super quick, even just a little bit, the fire of material existence goes down. Actually, it's described, I can't remember exactly where in Bhagavatam, but it's described that, just as one starts to eat, automatically hunger decreases. Similarly, as soon as one starts to serve, automatically hankering for material enjoyment goes down. And actually, this hankering and lamentation is what's stopping us from enjoying things. Uh, so as soon as the dial gets turned down on that, even just a little bit, one starts to enjoy life more. And then also, there's so many enjoyable things to do in Krishna consciousness. You're talking about prasadam, uh, which is everybody's favorite sense gratification, Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said for the first 2 years, eat until you squawk like a duck. Uh, so yeah, just prasadam, but even everything else. Uh, kirtan, just devotee association. Even if one is, an artist or a musician, one can do those things for Krishna. Whatever one enjoys. I'm trained as a scientist and I enjoy science. So I work with the BI. I do science for Krishna. Uh, so whatever one, even if one isn't on the perfectional stage, one can always do karma yoga, right? Work in a way that is satisfying to oneself and try to offer the results to Krishna. I feel like I got away a little bit from the original question, but
Enjoy life, Krishna consciousness.
yeah. All right, is there anything else from anybody? Have about 10-ish minutes left, assuming the pujaris are on time.
Like so many persons could also quote that connection, Ani Balashri Sundam
Mm,
Them, what pure devotional services, and also Haituki Apatiyata, the
mm,
Masuprasiditi. That service which enlivens itself is there's actually ways to determine whether you're actually in it.
mm,
Because if you are Apatiyata and Haituki, then you know that you're doing this probably devotional service. If it had true desire associated with it, then how could it be uninterrupted and causeless?
mm,
But if you reflect on your activity, like, oh, I've been doing this for 15 years, like some devotees, I've been doing this service for 15 years and haven't stopped. And even when there's been difficulties, they kept going. you think about like Giovanni Rospu is like doing the arti,
Yeah.
there's like floods and he's like up to his knees in water and the
Yeah.
snake is coming towards him and he's just doing his arti, you know?
Yeah.
So he didn't stop and he's been doing his whole life. And so you're like, well, you know, probably what I've been doing is something like pure devotional service. So that at least I've come to the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone thought.
Yeah. So it's uninterrupted. Main thing is just to keep the service going.
Okay, that's for sure. When I say keep the he says keep the transcendental vibration going.
Yeah.
That's his like his shirt. Keep the transcendental vibration going. Because then it can become pure devotional service. You know?
Right. Does our online audience have any comments, questions? Okay, if not, then we can end here. Chant a little bit before the doors open. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Advaita Acharya ki jai.
Grace Scholarship Prabhu ki jai. What verse is that? That's today, huh? Yeah. Or next verse. Kind of nervous that he says that because that's what I was thinking about too, because it's so kind actually that the Lord does that. Because when we do actually spiritual service, we do actually start enjoying life in Krishna consciousness. And then there's no end to that enjoyment. It's just a question of going through the anartha nivritti. You said like that fire is there.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, this is tough, you know. But then when you actually give up the material desires, then you start to feel like so liberated. You know, you're like, oh wow, why was I holding on to that? You know, like that was causing me so much pain. And Krishna just had to put you through it in order for you to finally get over it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's, part of the Varnashram system really is moving through those things. Right. So, like, especially, we always hear the Grihastha ashram.
Yeah, God's ashram was like an example of that.
We have that, you can go through it to be pure. And then, when I first, I but I guess, then initially, I got themselves. She might, just the day more. Then I'm, eventually. Even yeah, because even that one when you see the goal, we said clearly said, oh, I already definitely purified. You know, the love of purification is so deep actually. You know, it's accepted it, but when you go over it, that's yeah, saying sometimes, I heard about entertainment to during that last night. He said that very involved on the both on that was was you think unfortunately Yeah, so I'll find out a few minutes late.
Jai Damodar ki.
Jai Radha Radha Jai Radha.
Jai Ram.
Jai Radha 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 Jai Radha.
Oh, Jai Ram.
Jaya Pita Shakti
O Jaya Lalita Vishakamita Vishakashira
Shakti
Vishakashira
Jai Jai Sundari Jai Sundagari Jai Nita Sundari Jai Sundagari Jai
Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Jai Prabhupada John Pada said John Srimad. Purified by the first individuals who is not captured the issue achieving perfection bringing all desires. Connecting knowledge in my Lord, my power, with me, accepting and the Bible radiance is assured. Even the scriptures inspired us. All mercy was working in this. Should be. My bold devotees,